All right, let's dive into Pompeii. You know, that city frozen in time. Well, get ready for some serious Roman history because new excavations are revealing a whole different side to Pompeii.
Yeah, it's amazing. We're finding more than just the usual ruins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about whole sections of the city that show us how the wealthy elite lived, but also how the everyday Pompeians, just went about their lives.
So it wasn't all just fancy villas and togas.
Definitely not.
Okay, so the report we're looking at today highlights these new discoveries, and I gotta say, it reads like a Roman soap opera.
Oh, totally.
Luxury, drama, tragedy, it's all there.
And the cool thing is these discoveries are kind of turning some of our old ideas about Roman society upside down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're getting like a much clearer picture of what life in Pompeii was really like, from those amazing villas to the busy workshops and everything in between.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's unpack this thing. Starting with luxury Roman style. So picture this. You're a wealthy Pompeian. You had a long day. But instead of just, chilling out, you're stepping into, wait for it, your own private bathhouse.
And not just any bathhouse. This one is seriously huge.
Huge. Like, how big are we talking?
The report says it's the largest one ever found in a private home in Pompeii. Imagine a space the size of a basketball court just for bathing.
Wow, that's bigger than my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you got to walk me through this ancient spa experience. What would I see if I stepped into this place?
Get ready to be transported. The first thing you see is this changing room with these bright red walls and crazy detailed mosaics.
Sounds fancy.
Oh, it is. Then you move into the hot room, what they call the caldarium, where the floor is suspended over a furnace and the walls are designed to keep the heat circulating. It's like an ancient Roman sauna.
Okay, I can feel the heat already. What's next in this Roman spa extravaganza?
Next up is the tepidarium. It's a warm room, perfect for just relaxing. Picture yourself on a marble bench, surrounded by frescoes with scenes from mythology and nature.
All right, I'm relaxed already. But what about a cold plunge? Did the Romans do that too?
Oh yeah, for sure. The last stop is the frigidarium. It's this huge space with red columns, more amazing frescoes, and a big cold plunge pool. It's like an ancient Roman swimming pool.
Seriously, a private bathhouse with all the bells and whistles?
Mm.
It's hard to imagine this level of luxury in someone's home. It really makes you think, was this typical for the Roman elite?
Well, maybe not every wealthy Pompeian had a bathhouse this fancy, but it definitely shows us just how luxurious the upper-class lifestyle was. It's a pretty stark reminder of the huge gap between the haves and have-nots back then.
Okay, so we've got the haves covered. But these excavations are also shedding light on the lives of everyday Pompeians, the people who kept the city running.
Exactly. Imagine walking down a street in Pompeii and seeing laundries, bakeries, workshops all buzzing with activity.
A city that never sleeps kind of thing.
Totally. The report talks about finding tools and materials used for construction and renovation. So Pompeii was a city that was always changing and growing.
It's like they hit the pause button on a bustling city.
Hmm.
I love this quote from the director of the Archaeological Park of Pompeii, Dr. Gabriel Zistriegel. He said, "It's these spaces that really are part of the Pompeii effect.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if the people had only left a minute ago."
That's the magic of Pompeii, right? It's not just about the ruins themselves, it's about the people who lived, worked, and dreamed there.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a discovery that's a little more, somber. 2 skeletons found in a small room.
Yeah, these remains really show the human cost of the eruption and how different people's fates were on that tragic day.
You mentioned different fates. What do we know about these 2 individuals?
So one skeleton was a woman they think she was between 35 and 50 years old. And get this, she was found clutching jewelry and coins.
Like she was trying to take it with her.
It seems that way, which suggests she was probably pretty wealthy.
Wow. It's like she was clinging to her most prized possessions in her final moments.
It is. And then the other skeleton was found nearby. It belonged to a younger man, and based on his bones, archaeologists think he was probably a slave.
A slave and a wealthy woman found together in the same room. It makes you think about how random and indiscriminate death can be, especially during a disaster like this.
For sure. And it also shows just how divided Pompeii was socially. Dr. Sophie Hay, an archaeologist working at the site, said, "The most powerful thing from these excavations is that stark contrast between the lives of the slaves and the very, very rich. And here we see it. A wall is all that could divide you between 2 different worlds."
That's powerful. And alongside the skeletons, they found a whole bunch of artifacts that tell us even more about these people.
Oh yeah, we're talking delicate earrings, necklace pendants with etched semi-precious stones, even a collection of gold and silver coins. These were clearly valuable items, personal treasures that they held onto during the eruption.
It's incredible how these objects can transport us back in time, connect us to these people who lived almost 2,000 years ago.
I know, it's amazing. Another archaeologist, Dr. Alessandro Russo, said, "When we find this kind of object, the distance from ancient times and modern times disappears, and we can touch a small piece of the life of these people who died in the eruption."
So we have this amazing villa with the incredible bathhouse, these artifacts that give us a glimpse into people's lives, and this reminder of just how devastating the eruption was, but who actually lived in this place.
The report suggests that the owner might have been a guy named Aulus Rustius Verus. He was a big-time politician in Pompeii.
A politician with a taste for the finer things in life. This is getting interesting. Tell me more about what they found in his house.
Well, picture this. You walk into this massive banqueting room.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
The walls are painted black, which would have been a really bold choice back then, and they're covered in beautiful classical artwork.
So not your average dining room.
Not even close. This room was designed for hosting huge, lavish dinner parties.
Okay, I'm imagining a long table piled high with food guests lounging on couches, everyone dressed to impress. Sounds like quite the scene.
It definitely was. These banquets were a way for the Roman elite to show off their wealth and power. They were social events, business meetings, and even political platforms all in one. It wasn't just about the food. It was about showing your status and making connections.
So basically the ancient Roman version of networking, but with way better food and decor.
Pretty much. But the house wasn't all about showing off. They also found a smaller, more private room.
And what was in there?
This room was painted a calming blue, and they think it was probably used for prayer or personal reflection. It's a cool contrast to that huge banqueting hall. It shows that even with all the luxury and socializing, the Romans still valued some quiet time.
It's interesting how they designed their homes to have both public and private spaces.
Hmm?
I guess even back then, people needed a break from all that partying. But here's something I found really interesting. The report mentioned that they found tools and building materials all over the house. It sounds like even though this villa was a symbol of wealth and power, it was still under construction when Vesuvius erupted.
You're right. It's like they were right in the middle of a renovation project, always trying to make their home even better. It makes you think about how driven people are to improve things no matter what time period or social class.
And it also makes you think about how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
All those plans, all that ambition, gone in an instant.
It definitely puts things in perspective. It reminds us how fragile life is and how even the grandest things can be destroyed.
But it's also a reminder of how resilient humans are. Pompeii was buried for centuries, and it still fascinates us today. These discoveries, these glimpses into the lives of the people who live there, they give us a connection to the past.
I agree. And it's because of archaeologists that we're able to learn these stories. Every piece of pottery, every piece of jewelry, every skeleton helps us understand more about this lost city.
It really makes you wonder what other secrets Pompeii is hiding. What other everyday details are waiting to be discovered?
That's the best part about archaeology. It's all about discovery. And Pompeii, with everything so well preserved, has so much more to teach us.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to book a trip to Italy. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pompeii. Until next time, keep exploring and keep asking questions.
Okay, so we have this picture in our minds of Aulus Rustius Verus, living it up in his fancy villa. But we also have those two skeletons, the wealthy woman and the possible slave found in that small room. What else can we figure out about her? I mean, besides her great taste in jewelry.
Well, it makes you think about why she was clutching those valuables, right?
Yeah.
Like, what was going through her head in those last moments? Was she trying to, protect her wealth, or was it just instinct, just holding on to something familiar when everything was falling apart?
It's like when you think about what really matters when everything's going crazy around you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And her story, along with the man who might have been a slave, being found next to her, really shows us the social dynamics of Pompeii.
Yeah. On the one hand, you have this woman with her jewelry, probably used to a life of comfort and privilege. And then on the other hand, you have this young man whose bones tell a story of hard work, probably a life of servitude. It's a powerful reminder of how unequal Roman society was.
It's wild to think that they were both caught in this same disaster, But their lives before that would have been so different. Do you think their paths ever crossed before that day?
I don't know. That's something we might never know. But what we can see from the archaeological evidence is that the woman probably had an important role in her household and maybe even in the wider community.
Really?
Yeah, she was somewhere between 35 and 50 years old, so like in the prime of her life. And the jewelry, especially those etched semi-precious stones, those suggest a woman with refined taste and a good amount of wealth.
So even in ancient Rome, where men held most of the power, women with money could still have some influence.
Oh, definitely. And this woman's story seems to back that up. It makes you wonder if she was involved in the family business or even politics. Who knows? Maybe she was the brains behind Aulus Rustius Verus himself.
Ooh, intrigue. Okay, so we've got this powerful, wealthy woman, but what about the slave? What do we know about his life?
Sadly, the bones don't tell us as much about him.
Oh,
But based on what we see, we can guess he was a young man who did manual labor. His bones show signs of wear and tear, like from hard work, and because he was found near the woman, he was probably a domestic servant in her household.
so while the woman was enjoying her fancy bathhouse, this guy was working hard, taking care of the estate, attending to her needs.
It's something to think about, and it raises some questions about their relationship. Did they ever have any real connection, or was it all just, master and servant dictated by the strict social hierarchy of the time?
It's hard to imagine what it was like to be a slave in Pompeii.
Ah.
What kind of things would they have done?
Well, domestic slaves like him would have been responsible for all sorts of things.
Oh, yeah.
Like cleaning and cooking, running errands, taking care of the gardens. Basically, whatever their master needed them to do, their whole lives revolved around the household they served.
It's a pretty grim picture.
Yeah, it is. But we have to remember that this is just one small part of the story of Pompeii. As we keep digging and analyzing the evidence, we'll get a better understanding of the lives of all Pompeians, both free and enslaved.
And speaking of putting the pieces together, let's go back to that huge house, the one with the amazing bathhouse. What else did they find there?
Oh,
So let's go back to that amazing house, the one that may have belonged to Aulus Rustius Verus. We talked about the crazy bathhouse, but the report mentioned some other cool stuff. What else did they find?
so imagine you're walking into this huge banquet hall,
Okay.
and the walls are painted black. Can you imagine that?
Wow, yeah, that's a statement.
Right. It would have been super bold back then. And then there's all this incredible classical artwork on the walls.
So this wasn't just like your average dining room.
Nope. This room was made for throwing epic dinner parties.
Okay, I'm seeing it now. A giant table loaded with food guests reclining on couches. Everyone's dressed to the nines. It must have been quite the party.
Oh, absolutely. These banquets were how the Roman elite showed off, They were like social events, business meetings, political platforms all rolled into one. It wasn't just about the food. It was about showing everyone how important you were and making connections.
So basically the ancient Roman version of networking, but with much better food and decor.
Exactly. But the house wasn't all about showing off. They also found this smaller, quieter room.
Yeah, what was in there?
They think it was probably used for prayer or just personal reflection, some quiet time. It's interesting how different it is from that big banquet hall.
Yeah, it's like they needed a break from all the socializing.
Yeah.
Even the ancient Romans.
Right. It shows that they valued those quiet moments too. But you know what else I thought was interesting?
What's that?
The report mentioned finding tools and building materials all over the house. It sounds like they were still working on it,
Really?
Yeah, like they were in the middle of renovating when Vesuvius erupted. Even though it was already this super fancy villa, it's like they still wanted to make it even better.
That's so interesting. It makes you think about how much people are always striving for something more, no matter how much they already have.
Yeah, and it makes you think about how quickly things can change. All those plans, all that ambition wiped out just like that.
It really puts things into perspective. It's a reminder that nothing lasts forever, even the most impressive things.
That's true. But it's also a reminder of how powerful the human spirit is. Pompeii was buried for centuries, and it still has so little to teach us.
And it's all thanks to archaeologists,
Absolutely. They're the ones who bring these stories back to life. Every little piece, they find a piece of pottery, a piece of jewelry, a skeleton. It all helps us understand this lost city a little bit better.
It makes you wonder what else is out there waiting to be found. What other secrets Pompeii has?
Right. And that's the amazing thing about archaeology. It's all about discovery. And Pompeii, with how well preserved it is, has so much more to tell us.
Well, I'm officially adding Pompeii to my travel bucket list. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Pompeii.